Welcome to part 2 of the Boise State MBA Risk Management Program. What we are doing in this program is we're following the processes outlined by PMI. So we're in the area on Risk Management Plan. Again, our reference is the practice standards for risk management from PMI. As we've seen in the class, the emphasis in PMI in the planning area is to document and define how you're going to manage the project. So if you look at plan your project and your risk management plan, it is a written plan or a set of procedures of how you're going to do the project and how you're going to manage the risk. It will look at how you understand the risk, what tools you use, understand your mission or objective in the area, how you communicate, and it really builds a common understanding among the players on the team. So this is how we manage risk. Not all projects have a written risk management plan. Again, as we said in our first module, scalability is very important. So on small, more routine or more standard projects, you wouldn't invest at this level. But for more complex, more strategic projects, you definitely do this. In the class, when we first introduced project management as an MBA 503, we do not ask you to write a plan, but we will do this in 516 and our other courses in the MBA program. So one of the questions we ask people is, what do you do today for risk planning? When you go back to your companies or through your internship, it's a good question to ask. How many people really invest in risk planning? We'll use this in class for a discussion point, but understanding how you plan risk is a critical point. The more complex, the larger the stakes, the more funding involved, the more the need to have a written plan and a very active risk management program. Again, this module is on how we plan for and documentation of that plan. So our objectives of the risk management plan with the abbreviations RMP is we develop the overall risk strategy for the project. We describe the risk management process, how it will be executed or managed, and how we basically make risk management part of the whole project, how we integrate it in. So these are part of the key areas of risk management. So as we look for success criteria for risk management, or project-related criteria, levels of risk are driven by the attitudes of both the organization and the stakeholders. That's why we spend a lot of time in the first module talking about risk, how people accept risk, those biases they have. Guidelines and rules for escalating risk are basically managed in this plan or defined. A common understanding of terms, critical values, and thresholds is used and defined in this area as your written plan. And we define the type and level of risk detail to be addressed. Again, we will qualify all of our risk, but we want to look at the most critical ones that have the greatest impact and probability of occurring. And they're defined in this plan for each organization. Each organization is different. Each one has to define for their own projects their standards, and each one needs active management to be successful. Continuing with this, we want to make sure we identify and address barriers to successful project risk management. We want to involve the stakeholders in project risk management. Again, these are the key players, the key critical stakeholders, all the way from your customer, your management team, your support staff, the other players. Make sure they're involved in risk management if that's what's needed on the project. And you want to comply with organizational policies and objectives. In many cases, this dovetails right into the policies of a company. If companies follow an ISO 9000 standard, many times they'll have well, not just the quality side, but the risk management of projects defined in those documents. So one of the key areas for this is to have planning sessions where you actually work and develop this. This should not be done in a vacuum. And also in this section, in this plan, you define what templates or tools will be used throughout the organization. And well, why would we want to define that? Well, a critical part of that is you get standardization. If you're the manager, the key stakeholders or sponsors, you'd like to know that you have consistency throughout the major program and project. So people can, well, you know what tools they're going to use, you know you get good results, and it actually adds a great deal of efficiency to the project to follow standards. And as we look at the results of our risk management plan process, we work with people's attitudes, we define their roles and responsibilities, we work on communication. And if we look in the column on tools, we have what tools do we use? What's in our toolbox? What are those parameters? What are those key definitions? And from a business part of the plan, what are our constraints? And we also define amount of detail and effort that we're going to be using in the plan. It's an important thing to use all these criteria to help build the most successful plan. The review of the risk management plan from our PMI data basically comes up with the strengths involves the core, the weakness depends on experience, and that really does. Critical success factors, you really need to have a prior risk management templates that really help out. You really have to have prior stakeholder analysis, what the key needs are, and you have to really look for existing organizational guidelines for risk management. Basically, risk management strategy is important. We determine the methods, we plan for adequate resources, we look at risk management and risk training, we develop a roadmap throughout the activity, and we never include results. This is how we do it. You use if-then statements for how you write your activity for risk, and we tailor training for various groups in the organization. We will post, as you've seen, the slides for this video. On the slides, it's probably a lot easier to read this. Sometimes the video gets a little grainy. Let's walk through the process using a sample risk management plan and how you would use this at work. So think about that. What does this mean for your company, your project? What we're suggesting you do is we will post 2 to 3 samples. 2 of them former papers by students, and 1 we use as a risk management plan for a utility company. Have these in front of you as you look at the video. Also, when you go through the slides, use these for examples. We're not going to try to switch back and forth. We're just going to be using the key points. Again, you will need to take those examples, look at these key points, and learn from what we say as guidelines are and what has been developed. What you'll see in basically the purpose of the risk management and typical content, you'll see the project description, objectives, dependencies, and stakeholder analysis. This comes from your stakeholder work, which happens very early in the project. We're looking at risk management scope and objectives. What are your variance thresholds? Well, what's variance? Well, variance is a difference from a plan. So do you worry about 1%, 2%, 5%? What's your threshold? We look at how we prioritize our project objectives, threshold, weights, and other parameters. We define unacceptable threats and other opportunities. And we also look for impact probability. So we'll be developing a P&I matrix and selected criteria. Note, these are done before you start doing any results or work. This is how you set the framework. So when you discover a risk, you then have a framework to analyze it. So again, this is the pre-work that helps build the plan. Next area you'll see is the risk management methodology. What are our relationships with the organization? What are the risk management activities for the project? What are the risk taxonomy and risk breakdown structures, RBS? The RBS is the most popular tool as defined by PMI for looking at risk. And we'll show you those as we go through the tool section. We also want to look for the format and fully defined risk statements, and we'll give you examples of that, and also your key deliverables. Again, a great deal of the body of the risk management plan is in the methodology. So as we look at the risk management organization, what are the roles and responsibilities and levels of authority? Sounds like a really good case for a racing model. What are your rules of escalation if you find something? How do you communicate it? Who does it? And how fast? What's your budgeting, your scheduling, and reporting? These are all tasks that you define, so you have a really good way to manage your risk. So as we also look at risk management organization, what tools do you use? How do you find those tools? Where are they at? If you have a database in the company of how you track risk, what's the structure of that database? One thing that should be in the plan is how do you train people on those tools? It's great to call out very elaborate tools, but if you don't train the people to use the tools, it's really wasted space and time. Also, we look at communication planning. How are we going to communicate on these risks? So once we find that, how's our communication? How do we communicate with stakeholders? How do we communicate with the project manager and program manager? These are all things that are defined in this working document. I think one of the most important things of risk management plans defines the meta language. And this really comes down to not just saying a risk is, but for all risks to be clearly defined and need a standard structure for the way in which the risk is described, and that's defined in the risk management plan. And I kind of like this format right here. It says because of, and then one or more causes, the risk which you're identifying might occur, which would lead to one or more effects. And you use that sort of meta language, it's very easy to start describing the risk. It then is also good when you have somebody read it, they understand fully, not just do they assume that you understand or you assume they understand. So meta language is a big part of risk strategy, and it really helps you later on when you develop the strategy to address the risk or the triggering point. This really sets the framework in that activity. So we could practice some. We'll give you a few seconds here, but to do this offline. So look at different risks that you may have. Kind of use this statement and write these kind of statements. It takes a little practice, but once you do it, you find it's really a powerful tool for you to describe risk. As you've seen from the offline samples in this outline, it's a pretty lengthy plan. It'll cover maybe 3 to 5 pages. So you also look at what's your prioritization and selection process. Define the relative importance, the urgency, and other factors. This is how when you get the data, you communicate with the team, your sponsors, how you're going to look at this data and make it work for the project. That was our quick description of a risk management plan. What I suggest you do is you look at the slides, take the risk management plans that we've given you for examples, go through and look at that. One of the assignments we like to have MBA students do is to understand risk, is to develop a risk management plan. Why do you want you to do this? It's a tool that will help you really understand the risk process. It has broad application in all areas of business and management, and it will also give you a better background how the tools fit in and what it would take to be involved in a project like that. It's also something that you can show a future employer. Also, if you're working for a company now that doesn't have a risk management plan, what a great opportunity to use this class to develop that tool for your company and show them what you've learned at Boise State as part of your MBA.